job that I had was working for public broadcasting for free because I could afford it then. And so the first day we were going on the air with a program called Today in the Legislature, live every night, live in color. This is what they did today in the legislature. And the executive producer got into an argument with an anchor man that they had hired, and he turned to me and says, I'm going to make you a expletive deleted TV star. So I get on the air, and good evening, this is Elizabeth Willis for Florida Public Broadcasting. Today, the House of Representatives took up yet another revision of the workers' compensation bill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I got hired away by the Department of State to be their candidate and their lobbyist. So that was the beginning of 1975, I think it was, that the Secretary of State hired me to be the department lobbyist. And that's another thing that those of you who don't hang out up here need to know. Departments have lobbyists, and they function just the way every other lobbyist does. Their boss tells them, and this is what everybody does, their organization, their boss, whoever it is, tells them, we need a bill to do this. Go make this happen. And I've actually had governors tell me that. Make this happen, Bill. I don't want to hear any more about it. There was a fun time with that one when Graham was, because I was lobbying for them for 8 years for the Department of Business Regulation. Dogs, horses, highway, land sales, condominiums, hotels, restaurants, alcohol, beverage, and tobacco. So you can, I was the government guy. Well, you can imagine the lobbyists on the other side. These guys were representing dogs, horses, highway, land sales, et cetera. And we were in a meeting one time with Governor Graham, and there was a tax bill that had to do with pari-mutuel wagering. Complex in 1978, 79, somewhere along in there. And every one of these guys, dogs, horses, and highlight, every farm time, every racetrack, every owner, everybody was interested in doing this tax thing. And so the governor, since his aide, calls me up and said, get all those PM lobbyists. And of course, that was always fun to call them PM lobbyists. And we all got in the same room, and everybody in the room, except me, and either had been either the chairman of a standing committee, all ex-legislators. I was the only one who had ever been elected to the Florida legislature that was sitting in the room. And every one of them had either been the chairman of a standing committee, or the former speaker, or the former president of the Senate. And the governor, and I'm sitting next to the governor. And so they go around and they're discussing all of this, and this is what we're going to do, and I'm taking notes like a good girl. And then they all get up. This governor stands up, so of course they got to stand up. And everybody stands up. And he says, well, that'll be all, gentlemen. Turns around to me and slaps me on the back and says, make this happen, Ben. I said, perhaps you've forgotten who you're talking to. But at any rate, that was years ago. And let me tell you, let me start by answering the questions that I usually get asked at the end of the speech. Who are lobbyists? Lobbyists are work for either the company, a lot of times their company sends them up here. Go up there, spend the session, make sure that this law doesn't pass, or does, depending on what they want. One of the most delightful lobbyists I ever met was a woman who was just a real estate broker in Orlando. And she came up here because of some quirk in the real estate law that her company wanted to kill. They wanted to get rid of it. And it turns out somebody else had already introduced it, and so she came up here all by herself, without an organization, without anybody except her and her little 2 or 3 man company. Spent the whole session up here working herself. And said at the end of the session, I've so enjoyed meeting you, Ben. I've been running around the legislature and getting to talk a little unwritten rules, and I hope I never come up here again. Some people love it and some people hate it. I always loved it, because to me it's like, because nothing stays the same. I've always said it's like a chessboard. You get the hang of it on the first session, and the second session they twist it just a tiny little bit. So you got to learn something new and something new and something new. And after a while, the board's turned all the way around, and what used to be white queens that are now black queens. It's really, really fascinating stuff. And one time we had to do lobbyists came to town. He got hired by the Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services. And they sent him over here and said, Bill, take him under your wing, show him how to show the ropes. And I did. And about 3 or 4 days before the end of the session, and we were standing in the rotunda talking about these bills and how they were doing and what did he do. It's only 3 or 4 days left. And he said, Bill, this is so frightening. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you realize that whatever we do becomes a law? At any rate, lobbyists are, and then the second question people ask me is how do they get paid? Any way they can. Sometimes they are salaried employees of the department, people who hire them, either the corporation or the club or the organization. With Associated Industries has salaried lobbyists. The Florida Bar has salaried lobbyists. And then there's government there also. Sometimes that you have a contract for a session or for a bill. I once had a contract with a group of people who hired me to get something back in the budget that the governor had stricken in his budget recommendation. And they said, we will pay you, I can't even remember now, it was 25 years ago, we will pay you, I think it was $10,000 if we get this out of the budget, and another $10,000 if the governor doesn't veto it. And then there's people who lobby for themselves. Just, I want this to happen. I'm sure you've seen this. There's a gun rights advocate up here right now who's lobbying like crazy to kill the bill that would allow guns on campuses. And he's from California, and he has come to lobby against it. Under the rules now, you don't have to register to lobby unless you get paid to lobby. And I once got hired for on an hourly basis. A lobbyist called me and hired me and said, there is a member of the Senate who just hates me. And he told me why they had a big dispute about something several years before. And he said, it looks like I'm going to have to talk to him, and I will hire you to go over and talk to him, just this one guy on this one day. And I said, oh, that would be swell. And then I said, I really don't want to do it that way. I said, I'll contract with you for a session to talk to whoever you want to. He said, okay, I'll pay you $2,500 to register for my client. He was already registered for representing his client. And everybody who's added on, if you look at the lobby registration book, some organizations have 15 lobbyists. And a lot of those lobbyists have got multiple clients. When I was in solo practice and I had my own independent lobbying business, it was just me, and I had 5 or 6 clients at one time. Talk about running around juggling balls in the area. All of a sudden you find out your bill's in the House and the Senate at the same time.
Yeah. My friend Linda Desson, that's part of what they do at the Division of Legislative Services, and she sent me some statistics on lobbyists. I'm not sure that I understand exactly what they mean, but she said
to stand up so they can.
Oh yeah. She said for the legislative branch there are 1,712 registered lobbyists.
Yeah.
And then, this is the part I didn't understand, principals represented, that would be the companies that they would represent?
Companies or organizations?
Organizations, 3296. But this is where I didn't really understand her math, and maybe you can explain this. She said there's 9231 total registrations. Well, 17 and 32 doesn't add up to 92. So I didn't really understand where that came from.
Well,
do you understand that?
Entities, for example, the Growler bill, have you heard about that?
Yeah.
Well, the Growler bill has got bunches of organizations and companies that are interested in that bill and want it to either pass or fail. And they've each one hired lobbyists who are general lobbyists.
So that would be, as you said, having a lot of different clients.
Having a lot of different clients, and at the same time, you've got companies that hire more than one lobbyist who are also independent lobbyists. So you have lobbyists who have 30 or 40 clients, and they've got people. And that's how people become lobbyists, by the way, is that there are now companies who do this in Tallahassee. They didn't used to be when I started. But now there are companies who do it. Southern Strategies is the name of one of them, and Ballard's got one, and I forgot the name of it. You remember what that is? Ballard and Company?
Ballard Partners, I think they're up this way.
At any rate, they hire people, generally law students and undergraduates and graduate students from the university to do the running around for them. And then those people can get promoted up and become the lobbyist, or they will spin off and become the lobbyist for one of the clients. That's one way people become lobbyists. One of the others.
The other statistic that she said was, so that was legislative. She said 1712 registered lobbyists and 3296 principals. Then she said the statistic and said executive branch. So I wonder what the difference between that is. But 1335 registered lobbyists for executive branch and 2934 principals represented. So I just wondered what the difference between that is. I mean, so if you're an executive branch lobbyist, how does that make you different than a legislative branch lobbyist?
It's the same thing except that you're lobbying usually it's rulemaking. You are lobbying for changes in rules and regulations.
Because all the agencies are executive branch.
Right, all the agencies are in the executive branch. And how people become lobbyists is one of those that I just said, go to work for lobbyists. But ex-legislators, if you really want to be a successful, rich lobbyist, go get yourself elected to the legislature first. Then you go to being a lobbyist because you've got all the contacts, which is a very important thing. It's your stature as a political cat, so to speak. Oh, I was going to tell you that this lobbyist hired me to register, just register, because sometimes they want the ex-legislator to be registered to represent them, even though they don't ask him to do anything, and he doesn't do anything. His name is just on the roster as somebody who's lobbying for the Widget Manufacturers Association of Florida. Oh, he's lobbying for us. And then they've got a guy who's a widget manufacturer's chief administrative assistant who's doing the actual work. But it looks like they've got some hot shot that they pay to have his name on there. Okay, according to my outline, I'm supposed to tell you what the session is, and you'll already know that. It's under the Constitution says 60 consecutive days, beginning whatever. It used to be, say, the first Tuesday after the first Monday, but they changed it now, and they can change it at will. Right now, we just happen to have 60 consecutive days beginning the first Tuesday in March. That's what it is now, but they can change it whenever they want to. What that means is that counts the weekends. So when you've got 60 consecutive, you're actually only meeting Monday through Friday. Almost all of these people, a friend of mine, our police officer here is our sex trafficking expert, and because one of the other things that I do is that I accept court appointments to represent children, to be an attorney ad litem for children in dependency. When the parents' rights have been terminated, they no longer have, they've got the guardian ad litem, but they're not lawyers. So if once their parents are gone, they feel like they need it. Most judges want to appoint a lawyer to represent that child as a lawyer. And one of the interesting sidelights of that is that there's no mechanism for getting paid to do that, so all of us will retire to it. The session is, most of the people who are legislators have a job or a profession, and they can't stop down for 60 consecutive days. And they can't usually do everything they need to do on the weekends. So it's pretty habitual that everybody, there's nothing set to do except usually appropriations before noon on Monday and after noon on Friday. So they've got time to get back to the district, make some business calls for their private business during business hours. So everything is concentrated on those 6 weeks, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So if you go over there and it looks like a Chinese fire drill, that's why. Every legislator is appointed to more than one committee. So that means they're going from committee, subcommittee to committee to lunch to another committee to session, and then to a big meeting at night. And now now that we've got this law that prohibits anyone from giving a gift that worth more than $25 or any gift at all to a legislator, no longer do they have these big legislative parties lots of the stuff that used to be done when I was started out isn't done anymore. They're still just busy as they can be. It's how they keep up with it, I don't know. Because there are 3,000 bills ordinarily that are introduced. And that's where the lobbying business comes in, because there's only 10 or 15 bills that are heard at each committee meeting. And you've only got 5 weeks of committees. So that's as many bills as are going to be heard in a committee in the House and the Senate. The first thing they have to do is come up with an idea that you really think is important. Then figure out where in the statute that's going to go. And I'm going to give you a real example. Years ago when I was the director of the Division of General Regulation, that was my real title when I was the lobbyist for business reg. We licensed and regulated court reporters in those days. The legislature decided they no longer needed regulations, so they repealed the law several years ago, like 10 or 12. The law, which had been passed back in 1960, said that the division, to wit, my division, had to provide a place for people to take the test, and they had to take a test that we invented or contracted them to do twice a year. Well, we're in a government business. The government can only do those things that are specifically enumerated. Other people can do anything they want as long as it's not against the law. But when you're working for the government and it says twice a year, you can only do it twice a year. All of a sudden, we had 300, 400 people that wanted to take the test. There was no place in Florida where there were 300 or 400 typewriters in the same place. And that's what the test consisted of, and they had to type their report. So I had to go, I was the director and the lobbyist. I had to go to the legislature and get the words "at least" put into the statute, which is still a lobbying job. Draft the bill, see where it needed to go, take it to members of the House, try to get somebody to sponsor it, take it over to the Senate, try to get somebody to sponsor it over there. Then the next step is to go to the chairman, the staff director of the committee, get him, see if you can get that person to put it on the agenda, because it's a bill now. Get it to put it on the agenda so you can have it heard and voted out of that committee. And then you just keep doing that until it's done. You have to go to the committee, then you have to go to each member of the committee. Now, I know this doesn't sound important, but it's important to us because we've got these people and they need to take this test, and I need to have the legislative authority to give it whenever I want to. Well, and there's always somebody who's going to argue with you. I always thought, oh, who would ever argue with this? Well, every time I've been lobbying all these years, there's somebody who's going to argue about everything. I've often said that whatever goes into the legislature, a beautifully crafted, gorgeous piece of prime rib comes out slightly rancid hamburger. There is something in the heart of the legislature that just can't leave it alone. We got to debate it, maybe we got to amend it. Certainly we've got to listen to everybody that comes up and wants to talk about it in the committee, which is nice when you want to talk, but you don't want to know. So that is, but the most important thing in the beginning is to figure out exactly what it is you want to do. Because you can't just say, in statute, you can't say should or ought to, or it would be a good idea if. You got to say shall or will. They will do this and they must do that. And it's always a problem because somebody's always wanting to put an amendment on your bill that says just should or ought to or some weasel word like that. It doesn't work. Then the next thing you have to do is it's work. It's really work. You've got to go to see these guys. You've got to catch them in the hall. You've got to go to their office. They're always busy. Catherine and I were talking about how much lobbying you do, catching them in the hall on the way to a committee. And they will. And one of the rules there's a bunch of unwritten rules, I'm going to tell you 3 of them right now. Never sit at the committee table. You'd be surprised how many people go to a committee meeting, and now they've got these rails that make it really tough to get there. The rails weren't always there. And you would have the room would be packed, standing room only. Some guys go sit at the committee table. And the second rule is don't sit at the committee table, and so on. because it's all the same thing. You have to be more respectful of them than you would think. They are easily offended. They have spent every ounce of money, energy, effort, everything they've got to get elected. And they did it. And they will say that to you. If you ever want to engage one in a conversation in a social setting, just say, and tell me how it happened that you ran for office the first time. Boy, they're off and running, because it's always a story. It's all, and one of my favorites was, and I was there when this happened, a big, really correctional officer from Florida State Hospital, Florida State Prison came over, and he was sitting in the audience, and they got to the end of the committee meeting and said, well, it's 12 o'clock, we are going to adjourn now, we don't have time to take up these last two bills. And this guy stood up and said, wait a minute, I took a day off and took a pay hit to come over here to testify on this bill. And I can't do this just every week. And the committee chairman says, well, if you want to talk about a bill, get elected. And he said, all right. I kid you not. He went home that summer and got elected 3 months later, served 5 terms in the legislature. And there are other people who decided to vote. And Bobby Hartman's another funny one. Back in 1968, they kept throwing out the redistricting plans. The Supreme Court kept throwing them out, throwing them out, throwing them out. And finally, they got to the point where each county was going to elect everybody at large. Well, Dade County had hundreds of people who were going to run for something like 50 seats. And Bob Hartman's father was the mayor of Coral Gables. And he and his father were in the real estate business downtown, and they were routinely, for years, and somebody running for public office, write them a check for $100 to get to the block. And Bobby said that by the third round, the same guys were coming back. They'd already run once, and they got to the round, they had to do it over. And all of a sudden, I remember, the filing fee is $100. So he said, I ran right down, filed to run for office for the House of Representatives, paid my $100 for myself. And then they were coming and saying, I'm sorry, I'm running myself. Thanks. You know, got elected and served 5 terms. and he always said, I left the legislature unindicted, unindicted, undefeated, and not divorced. So the point I'm trying to make is that lobbying is as diverse as we are. There's a lobbyist who is lobbying for everything. The Hillsborough County's lobbyist is right here. Catherine lobbies for the blood banks. Are there any others who are registered lobbyists for anybody? And she's lobbying for a government, she's lobbying for a nonprofit. I'm lobbying for a nonprofit. And I have lobbied for Associated Industries, I've highly a racetrack, you name it, just all kinds of stuff. And so people who say, oh, lobbyists, boo, you know, there's an article, there was something in the paper that they're soliciting for people, ordinary citizens, not lobbyists, real people, to write letters to the editor about something or other. I almost wrote the letter and said, I hate to tell you this, but I'm a real person. Once you find a sponsor and you've got the language that you want to go in a bill, that the legislator takes it and he has to go to bill drafting, and they do it like they want it. And it comes back, and 99 times out of 100 you're happy with it, but if you're not, the only guy who has any authority to do anything about that is the voting member. You are not permitted to go to bill drafting and have a chat with them about the way they redrafted your bill that you thought you spent hours on, especially if it was drafted by a committee. The first reading of the bill is formally done, and it's done out loud. And it sometimes takes 2 hours the first couple of days of the session, because of the bill. And one of the things you need to understand is there's a deadline for introduction of bills, and it's early in the game. It's like usually about 2 or 3 weeks into the session. So if you haven't got your bill sponsored and ready to go by day 1 of the session, you might as well just know you're going to wait till next year, because there's no way you can do it at the last minute. Except, of course, if you've been around a long time, somebody comes to you in the middle of the session, and this happened in 1983. A group of women came to see me and told me that they wanted to hire me to lobby for a bill. They were the Florida Association of Spouse Abuse Centers, as they call themselves. They didn't call themselves refuge houses in those days. And they said, we have a bill. I just can't remember which one it was, because I lobbied for them for years after that. So they called me and said they wanted to come over to Tallahassee and meet with me, and I said, fine, I'll look up. And I met with them. I said, I hate to tell you, ladies, but there is no such bill. I don't know where you thought you had a bill, but nothing's been introduced. And they said, oh, and then they gave me the name of the member of the House that had promised to sponsor it for them, and he was going to get a Senate sponsor. So I said, well, I'll go talk to him. So I went and spoke to him about it. He said, oh, I forgot. I said, forgot? You've got to be kidding me. In those days, my minimum fee was $5,000 just to register. And I asked him, I told him, I said, they said, oh, we had planned to pay you. This is not charity. I said, oh, how nice. What did you have in mind? Well, we'll just give you our entire budget, $300. I said, I'll take it. But, so I went to see him about it, and I said, you forgot? These people really did know this. And I wish I could remember now, but one of them that they wanted to pass, and I think this was it, was to add to the list of considerations that judges had to make as to whether or not the spouse had been convicted of domestic violence before he ordered the children to be the visitation. It had to be considered. And up until that time, they just said, well, I do what, the guy gets to see his kids. And so then, of course, they issued the order that he had to go pick up the kids. And a little statistic for those of you who may not have heard it, by the way. If a woman goes to a spouse abuse center and goes home and to live again with her abuser, 40% of them are dead within a year. They are murdered. The leading cause of death in the workplace when I was working at HERC was murder of women. Women in the workplace die of murder. Not by anybody in the workplace, but by their charming family members of one sort, At any rate, so I go to see him, I said, we gotta do something. He said, I'll tell you what you do, Deb. You just keep watching what's on the floor every day, and you draft an amendment to every bill that you think I can get that thing on. And that's what I did the rest of the session. As soon as a special order calendar came out, which it does every day, the list of the bills that they're going to take up on the floor that day, I would look through the bill, see the one that I thought maybe they would accept as a single, because they've got the single subject authority. You can't just throw stuff on there like they did in the Congress. And I did it every day. Stood in the rotunda, drafted it, put it in a piece of paper, handed it to the bailiff, who takes it into the chamber, and he'd unfold it and he'd look at it. I'd run up to the gallery, I'd look down and he'd go, days and days. We finally found a bill that we put it all on the floor and never committed. Nobody ever discussed it. It was just totally against all that was holy. And we got it in there, and by jingo, it goes down to the Senate in a rather non-controversial bill. And I'm standing in the rotunda. The bill is coming up in the Senate committee. And I lobbied it a bit, but there were some guys that they were telling me, don't lobby him. He is a wife beater. Don't even try, because if he finds out that, this could have some effect if he ever gets a divorce. So I did actually lobby some guy that said, wait a minute, do you have to be convicted? Yeah, convicted. They used to say charged, but now we've decided that that's not fair. It's convicted, it's what we ought to say. I don't know whatever happened to that law, by the way. It's not on the books anymore. But at any rate, so I stand in the rotunda, and all of a sudden, the Senator Skinner's aide comes running out and said, Senator wants to speak to you. And I said, okay. So I run out. Oh no, that was the bill that we were getting, deleting the requirement that women who were raped had to pay $250 for the lab reports on the rape kit. Believe it or not, that was the law. So I run, and we got it in the house, and we go down there, and Skinner comes out and he says, And so she said, he wants to see you in his office right this minute. So I go running down there, and I said, what? And he said, you're ruining my bill, you're killing my bill. And I said, what do you mean? I don't have a bill that's killing your bill. And there was an amendment. I said, I had no idea it was your bill. It says, by the committee. I didn't know it was your bill. Oh, okay. Because legislators can introduce a bill, but so can committees. And they can simply, the chairman of a committee can simply decide, this is an issue. My first big bill that I ever did was in 1975 when I was lobbying for the Department of State, and I was charged with the responsibility of getting a bill passed, which was a complete start to finish rewrite of the corporate laws. The Florida Bar had been working on it. There was huge, we've got to get this thing. It had been cobbled together little by little over 25 or 30 years, and they wanted it to fit because it was internally inconsistent and stuff. And of course, so I go down to the Senate House Commerce Committee, Senate Commerce Committee, I said, don't y'all want to have this as a committee bill? And John Forbes was the chairman, and I knew him from Jacksonville days, and he said, no, I will sponsor this individually. But here's the deal. I will never see it again until I have to appear in person. Yes, sir. So that meant that when it came up in a committee, in those days you could do this, I would get up there and say, Mr. Willis, I'm from the Department of State, and this is a bill that that will rewrite corporate law in Florida. It is the product of a 2-year project of Florida Bar, and I'm here to answer any questions. Of course, I didn't know a corporation from Florida. But boy, I learned fast. And sure enough, I got it through. He never had to appear before a committee, House or Senate. No, Senate sponsor did. All of a sudden, it comes up on the floor of the House. And I'm in the gallery watching my big bill. And the speaker says, now, Senate Bill 4059. That was the bill number, believe it or not. I still remember after all these years. Mr. Forbes, Mr. Forbes, this is your bill. Forbes gets up and says, what? He says, 4059, that's your bill, you're the sponsor. He said, I don't know what it is. And somebody next to him pressed him and said, that's that corporate bill. He said, I don't know what it is. Can I temporarily pass it and let me ask Bill what it says? So they can do their own bill if they want to, and sometimes they do. But more often than not, what happens is that a legislator will have a bill that is coming up in the committee, and then they'll amend it and amend it and amend it in the committee. And then they'll say, somebody will say, I move that we make this a committee bill. And that's how come you'll see. And then the next committee will do the same thing. And that's how come you'll see CS, which stands for committee substitute, CS/CS/CS/House Bill 52, because it's been through, it's committee substitute for committee substitute for committee substitute for committee substitute. And then and that bill at the end is what is probably going to be going to the floor of the House. Amendments get put on bills because people want to get their bill passed. So they'll come to see you about, can I put my bill on your bill as an amendment, because I see your bill's doing better than mine is. You've already got it out of that committee, can we put it on the next committee? Because the bills are sometimes referred to as many as 4 committees. If it's got too many committees, then since there's only going to be 5 weeks of committees, you're in danger of never having the bill heard again, because you've got to get it on, you would then have to get it on a committee agenda every single week. And so what you do is you go get it, you go start it lobby with the Speaker's office or somebody, you have it withdrawn from this committee or that committee. And when you're watching the floor, at the end of at the beginning of every meeting of the House of the Senate, you will hear, are there any motions on committee reference? And they'll pop up all around. Move you that the House Bill 1715 be removed from the committee on appropriations. And so it's not on that agenda. And in order to do that, you have to get the committee chairman to move to get your bill out of the committee without being heard. Okay, what's the other thing? Last thing I want to say. Anything and everything that you want to know about what's going on in the legislature, you can find online on a website called Online Sunshine. onlinesunshine.com. You can track a bill, you can track a legislator, you can get the daily calendar, you can find out what's happening. All the calendars are published every day, which is the regular calendar, and what they call the special order calendar, which is the calendar of the list of bills that are going to be taken up on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate. And every other thing you ever wanted to know about every bill, every day. They also have a system in there for tracking whatever statute number that you want, what bills will amend that. And which, unfortunately, they've got, the new system has got it fixed up so that you have to put in exactly the subsection of the law that you want to track. So we're talking about, with the Parents Bar, as we call ourselves, conflict counsel for the dependency. We're trying to find out what they're planning to do, chapter 39 of the dependency chapter. And I said, oh, that's okay, I'll find out. Oh, really? Because you look at the list and you've got to go subsection by subsection by subsection in order to find out what is being proposed as an amendment. Okay. What else? Anything else? You now know more than you ever wanted to know. And we were talking about secret sources. After you've been around a while, and that's why lobbying one bill for 1 year is very tough, because you don't have a chance to develop the personal relationships upon which this operation works. In fact, I had a friend who told me that the lobbying is running around with an invisible bag on your shoulder. And every little fact about every legislator, every bill, every process, everything, just throw it in there. Throw it in there. 2 or 3 years later, you throw it down on the floor. What was the name of that guy? Or what was the name of that bill? And whatever happened to old so-and-so? And it really is collecting. It's just like learning how to practice in front of a different judge. Well, we do it. The lobbyists do it every day with a different committee and a different member of a different system. And the Republicans have got their rules and the Democrats have got theirs. And how you, now that they're really tough about appearance cards, if you want to speak, you have to fill out an appearance card. And it used to be, oh, well, it was all very goosey-goosey. Now sometimes they'll let you speak and then you can fill out the card afterwards. But they're real goosey about doing it now. So they're happy to hear you. What?
I had a quick question. Have you ever been asked to, or have you had to lobby for something that you personally disagree with?
Oh gosh, I forgot that. That's one of my first questions that people always ask me. At one time, when I was lobbying for business reg, the governor's office said that they wanted me to get a bill sponsored that would deregulate elevators, that is, get rid of elevator inspections. And we had a whole section that did elevator inspections. You couldn't move into a building unless the elevator had a certificate of occupancy. And so I went to my dear friend Elaine Gordon, and I asked her if she would sponsor it. She said, you go back and you tell the governor that I'll put my name on this bill, but he better understand it is a personal favor to you. And there's nothing, I don't agree with it, but I'll do it. So I go down to the Senate, I did the same thing with the senator, and he's telling me the same thing. I'll do it, but you be sure to tell him that I'm only doing this. Okay, the bills get published. A month later, the governor's secretary calls me. Get over here. There's a bunch of guys out here that are just downright scary. And I said, what? She said, these are the guys that install elevators. And they look like they could pick them up and put them in. So I go there, sure enough, there's 25 guys who are in the elevator installation business. And they're over there telling them, what are you talking about? It's having those inspections that protect us from liability claims. This is inspected. You dropped yourself down in the elevator, so what? So then the governor says, well, get it withdrawn. And I said, Governor, if you think it's hard to get a bill sponsored, try getting them to say, never mind. So I had to go beg them to withdraw the bill from further consideration of the House or the Senate. Then, don't you ever think that to me? But that's the only time. Otherwise, I don't think nobody ever asked me. I've been around, you know, when I first started, there weren't no women doing this. And I'm 5'9". And in those days, I wore high heels. So I'm walking around in the rotunda 6 feet 1. And they didn't think, the only woman in the rotunda, they could hardly miss me. So everybody kind of knew who I was and kept on. You know, been up there 35 years, whatever the number is. And of course, if I could add subtract, supply, divide, I wouldn't be a lawyer at the time. Catherine.
You know how lawyers sometimes will say when we're referring back to their clients, they'll say we, or we want this, so on and so forth. Is it true that for lobbyists, that if they don't personally agree with the bill, they say, you know, whoever their client is, it's like AIS position that, instead of saying, we want X, Y, and Z, is that like an unwritten language? Have you heard about that?
No, because if a client comes to me and wants me to lobby for something that I think is bad public policy, I just say, sorry, find somebody else. I can't do it.
That's the ideal.
Yes. And I just, you know, nobody's that hard up for money that they're gonna do something they think is illegal, immoral, or fapping.
Please tell us, thank Viv